Warning, I chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised.
Thousands of stories that I want to talk about when I do your podcast, but also we can do it here on this show too. But
yeah, and I could just play the audio on my podcast.
I just saw this because an open secret shared it on Twitter. Hi, Jimmy Fallon. Why are you emailing a 15-year-old girl from your NBC email account? The same girl your co-star, Horatio Sanz, later sexually assaulted. So this lawsuit was just filed today. 8/12/2021. Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of New York. Jane Doe, plaintiff, versus NBC Universal Media LLC and SNL Studios and Horatio Sanz and John and Jane Smith 1 through 20. Fictitious persons and or entities. It goes on to say John and Jane Smith 1 through 20 are people who were hired or employed or supervised or oversaw defendant Sanz at NBC and or SNL and or which operated the facilities described above and or who were employed at NBC and or SNL and who had knowledge of Sanz violations outlined below in its complaint. Defendants. For the above named defendants, you are hereby summoned and required to serve upon plaintiff's attorneys a verified answer to the verified complaint in this action within 20 days after the service of this summons, exclusive of the day of service or within 30 days after service is complete. If this summons is not personally delivered to you within the state of New York, in case of your failure to answer, judgment will be taken against you by default for the relief demanded in the complaint. The plaintiff brings this case pursuant to New York's Child Victims Act within the 2-year retroactive revival window, which removes the previous statute of limitations as a victim of sexual assaults, sexual misconduct, and sexual harassment due to the failures and egregious conducts of defendants NBC and SNL, which permitted and enabled defendant Sanz to groom and ultimately significantly harm her, as described more below. The plaintiff, Jane Doe, at 14 years old, started a Saturday Night Live fan site. In January 2000, defendant Sanz and co-star member Jimmy Fallon emailed plaintiff, then 15, from an NBC email account. Thereafter, defendant Sanz began his process of grooming plaintiff. On or about October 7 or 8, 2000, plaintiff, 15, and defendant Sanz met in person at NBC after an airing/taping of Saturday Night Live, during which Sanz, 31, was flirtatious and physically affectionate with the then 15-year-old plaintiff by kissing her cheek and putting his hands on her waist. In the fall of 2000, plaintiff, 15, and defendant Sanz met in person again at NBC after an airing/taping of Saturday Night Live, where Sanz was again flirtatious and physically affectionate. On or around May 12, 2001, plaintiff, 16, was permitted entry to attend a Saturday Night Live after party. Defendant Sanz, along with other SNL cast members, saw her at this party drinking alcohol, at a time when they knew or should have known that plaintiff was under the legal drinking age. Defendant Sanz joked, quote, "Is that, name redacted, the fan? It's, name redacted, the fan. A fan drinking at the party," and further was aware, or should have been aware, that she was underage. At the party, plaintiff 16 was served alcohol and danced. Defendant Sanz spent time drinking alcohol with plaintiff 16. The next week, or around May 19, 2001, plaintiff 16 was again permitted by SNL cast members to attend an after party of NBC and SNL Studios, within NBC Studios, where she was shown around the facility. On this date, while in the SNL offices, defendant Sanz was sitting on a couch telling stories to a group of approximately 6 to 10 people, including NBC employees, when defendant Sanz signaled plaintiff over and guided her to sit on his lap with her legs positioned between his legs and his arm around her hips, waist, and buttocks, where he continued to tell stories. On or around September 29, 2001, plaintiff was again permitted to attend an SNL After Party, where she was served alcohol. At the party, plaintiff sat with defendant Sanz and Jimmy Fallon, where plaintiff consumed alcohol in their presence. On this evening, defendant Sanz drank alcohol with the underage plaintiff and gave plaintiff a rose. This is one of many times that Sanz gave roses to plaintiff, continued communicating with plaintiff through AOL Instant Messenger, and continued to ask plaintiff to describe her sexual experiences. On November 17, 2001, defendant Sanz put plaintiff on his guest list for the SNL After Party for that night. As he would continue to do, plaintiff sat with Jimmy Fallon and others in a VIP area, ordered and consumed a Budweiser beer in the presence of NBC SNL employees. Plaintiff sat with Jimmy Fallon and they shared calamari. At the party, plaintiff told Jimmy Fallon she was in high school, to which he commented, quote, "So you have a few years before you graduate," and asked plaintiff what she intended to study in college. They also discussed plaintiff's upcoming SAT. People seated at the table became very quiet when plaintiff disclosed she was a junior in high school. At the party, Fallon also introduced plaintiff to show producer Lorne Michaels, and they discussed plaintiff's Jimmy Fallon website. Plaintiff was never asked by anyone for ID before being served alcohol, and despite plaintiff being underage, she was continually permitted by NBC employees to consume alcohol and attend the parties regularly, including at least 4 occasions in winter and spring 2002. On or about May 11, 12, 2002, defendant Sanz provided alcohol to plaintiff, 17, and gave her a ride in a limousine paid for by defendant NBC and operated by an employee and or agent of NBC. On this evening and morning, plaintiff attended 2 SNL parties, one of which took place at an SNL cast member's loft, where defendant Sanz openly put his arm around plaintiff while they talked with other guests and NBC employees, SNL cast members. Both at the parties and afterwards, defendant Sanz intentionally touched the plaintiff's sexual or intimate parts for the purpose of degrading or abusing plaintiff and or for sexual gratification, including kissing her, rubbing her breast, rubbing her buttocks, and digitally penetrating her genitals forcibly and without plaintiff's consent. All in violation of New York Penal Code 130.52, forcible touching, and 130.55, sexual abuse in the 3rd degree. Plaintiff did not and could not expressly or impliedly acquiesce in the defendant's sexual touching. At all relevant times, defendant Sanz acted through forcible compulsion, as defined by New York Penal Code 130.00. Considering his position of power and authority over the plaintiff, the young age of plaintiff, 17, as compared with the defendant, 32, the relative size and strength of the defendant compared with the plaintiff, the nature of the defendant's relationship to the plaintiff, and the plaintiff's isolation with the defendant at the time of the offenses. Attendees at the party, who were NBC employees, observed defendant Sanz groping and assaulting plaintiff, and one commented, quote, "Are you fucking serious?" On or about May 19, 2002, plaintiff, 17, attended an SNL finale party at NBC and was admitted entry onto the premises by NBC employees, Fallon and defendant Sanz. Plaintiff openly consumed alcohol at this party while underage, including while talking to SNL executive producer Michael Shoemaker. After engaging in the non-consensual sexual conduct with plaintiff described above, defendant Sanz continued to contact plaintiff when she was less than 18 via AOL Instant Messenger to engage in sexually inappropriate conversation, during which she later found out, in 2019, he masturbated and solicited sexual images from plaintiff in violation of New York and Pennsylvania law where she lived, as outlined above. During this time period, Sanz continued to put plaintiff on his guest list for SNL After Parties, where she continued to be served alcohol and engaged in drug use. For the remainder of high school, plaintiff became depressed, ashamed, and self-loathing. She regularly self-medicated with dissociative drugs. Over the course of the next few years, while she was in college, she continued to struggle with shame, depression, and self-harm. Defendant Sanz continued to message plaintiff and solicit sexually explicit images and conversation from plaintiff. Defendant Sanz became increasingly emotionally abusive and controlling towards plaintiff. In 2005, as a direct and proximate result of the ongoing intense shame and damage plaintiff suffered due to the sexual conduct by Sanz, she was hospitalized for treatment. Defendant Sanz' actions after a sexual assault of her while she was underage and enticing her into sexual performances online while she was a minor continued to cause psychological harm and damage to plaintiff. And in the summer of 2019, the plaintiff ran into defendant Sanz at a comedy event in New York, where Sanz admitted to engaging in frequent, quote, cyber sex with her, and further admitted and bragged to plaintiff that he masturbated during their conversations when she was underage. He later admitted this again in a text message exchange on November 27, 2019. He said he, quote, felt terrible about hooking up with the plaintiff, a then 16-year-old girl. He unintentionally groomed plaintiff, and he was, quote, very sorry. Plaintiff could, quote, me too him, because, quote, it happened. He would, quote, swear on a stack of improv books, I'm a different person. Quote, after the Tracy Morgan party, I really tried to fix what I had done. Quote, I was very immature and had very limited sexual awareness. It goes on and on and on and on, and he pretty much admits it all. And they're demanding a jury. Fucking stoned.
I got money.